Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call to order the PZBA meeting on May 28th at 7:03. Roll call, please, Ben.
Chairman Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Sayward. Here. Commissioner Simmons.
Here.
Commissioner Mashevsky.
Here.
And Commissioner Weigel is absent. We have a quorum.
Great. Let's pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First item is the minutes from April 23rd. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or corrections? If there are none, can I please have a motion to approve the April 23rd PZBA meeting minutes as presented?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right. We have one case this evening. Oh,
Let the record show that Commissioner Weigel has arrived.
Yes.
And we still have a quorum.
all right. We have one case this evening. It's the old business case number 25-04V. It's a public hearing. The applicant is Joey Pascucci, 697 Glendale Drive in Prospect Heights. And the description of the request is consideration of variation to allow 300 square feet roof addition to a 720 square foot existing detached garage that exceeds the maximum allowed per section 5-3-4G lot coverage at the property in the city's R1 single family residential district. This is an old case, so we continued it. Can I please have a motion to reopen case number 25-04V?
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please, Jen.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Mashevsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Weigel.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye. So to summarize where we left off, we have, the PZBA has continued the case and has asked the staff to explore the possibility of specifying this property as a legal non-conforming and to try to do a little more investigation to come up with more evidence as to how this project came about. So I would ask Dr. Peterson to let us know your findings.
So I followed up with the city attorney as directed on the definition of legal nonconforming. And it was brought back that we would have to determine the legality of the structure. Was it done by permit? Was it done without permit, based on all the information we could gather? So I contacted Gabold Hamilton and Associates, our city engineering firm who manages our GIS software, and we did an aerial review of the site conditions. Just to show everybody, up on the screen right now is the existing structure, and this comes from Mark Toberman Mr. Pascucci's a design engineer for their swimming pool project. He had done a lot coverage assessment to show impervious surfaces, which was brought into evidence last month. And basically, this diagram, not the hand notes on there, but the diagram shows that the structure is, the garage itself is actually 820 square feet with a 360 square foot overhanging roof, which puts it at almost 1,200 square feet of a covered area. So secondly, based on that information, which was submitted in last month, to verify the actual conditions, because on here, there's conflicting notes. There's the table on a previous exhibit of this diagram that shows that it's 820, then there's a note that was overscribed by the applicant's engineer that says that the roof area of the garage is only 1,080 square feet. I had a city inspector measure the actual conditions out there, and the existing conditions are 24 feet 2 inches wide by 36.1 for the detached garage, and another 10 feet wide by 36 feet. So the actual conditions out there are much greater than what was approved by the original permit. We have determined that the garage, based at the timing of that, was inspected. There were no notes that it was being out, so the garage itself at 820 square feet was presumed to be inspected by staff and approved, so that is out of the question. You know, the 820 is what it is. Secondarily, can we go on to the next?
Excuse me, Dan?
Yes.
Can you clarify on here, on the dimensions that were given, it's 872?
So, let's see, I just have to double check his math because it's 36.1 by 24.2.
You're just gonna make what exhibit you want.
Yeah, exactly. Where's my calculator? It-
873 is also what's on your staff review in
It's
Yeah.
873.
A1.
So it's just that we went out there to confirm what the conditions were. So
872.
872,
That's my numbers.
so 872 plus the 360 throws it over like 1234. So just to know what we were starting with physically out there of the structure. So let's go to exhibit number 21. And these will be entered in as new staff exhibits. And that'll, that needs to be rotated to the right. So Exhibit 21, GH Gaywold Hamilton contracts with the service that we have access to that does date-stamped satellite imagery. And the image on the left was taken in September of 2018, it's September 27th, I believe, and it shows the garage as it was existing before the roof. You know, and this is what we're saying was the original condition at the roof at the time of the final inspection in August. On the right-hand side, which is dated July 9th of 2029, shows the roof, or 19, excuse me, my glasses are bad, I need new ones, shows the overhang as it is currently today. So sometime between September and July, it went in. Can you go to exhibit number 22, please? That'll probably have to be turned, no, it did turn. So in April of
April 9, 2019.
April 9th of 2019. The left-hand photo shows what appears to be concrete piers in there. So work started sometime in April and was finished then in July again. So sometime after the approval work started. 23, please. And then this one here shows that the concrete slab was done sometime in 2020. The city has no record of any permits being applied for, taken, or any inspections done of those structures. So based on the timeline that we see, I asked the attorney, how can we define this? And could it be defined as legal non-conforming? And the answer is no, because the structures as it exists today, specifically the roof overhang was not permitted or legal per any records with the city. So it cannot have a legal non-conforming designation. The garage, on the other hand, the oversized 873 or 4-foot garage, because we did have inspection reports, we did have that, would be considered approved and acceptable because he relied on the city's approval, and the city did not challenge that at the time of inspections. So at this point in time, it comes down to the overhang as the non-conforming condition.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Peterson from the group at this point, or we can, does the applicant have, would you like to present your case? Okay.
He's already sworn.
You are still under oath, both of you, I think, you might not be, okay. Do you swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, so I would like to address a few key points from the staff review and analysis section of the memorandum posted May 21st, 2025, with the aim of providing further clarity and context. Regarding the removal of the concrete pad, the decision to delay its removal, by the way, I didn't realize that you needed a permit to do a small little concrete pad behind a garage. That was the reason why I didn't get a permit strictly for that. Everything I've ever done at my house, and Director Peterson can attest, I've gotten permits for everything. My driveway at the front of the house, we did that. We added a porch overhang on the front of our house, got a permit for that. A garage, went through a permit for that. Everything I've ever done, the pool, got a permit for that. The overhang, I was told by the inspector that he didn't need it, it was just an overhang, as long as there was not concrete underneath there. So with that said, I've always abided by the law and the rules and everything like that. I want that to be known.
We're talking about the removal of the pad, yeah.
The decision to delay its removal was made upon the advice of my contractor. Given the wet ground conditions at this time, it was March, removing the pad would have severely damaged the surrounding yard and created additional costs to avoid this because of the wet climate and the spring, a lot of rain. To avoid this, the contractor suggested we postpone the removal until other concrete work was going to be performed for the pool, allowing us to carry out the task more effectively. In the interim, he took the step of covering the entire pad facade to make it unusable, and we removed the shipping container first, with the plan to later repurpose the sod once the ground conditions were more favorable. This solution was most practical and cost-effective way to comply with the city's mandate within the given time frame. Although the pad was not physically ripped out at that moment, it was rendered unusable and for all practical purposes removed. Regarding the size of the garage, it's important to note that the discrepancies in size stem from what appears to be a combination of contractor and inspector oversight. Despite 4 separate inspections, each including the other corrections and accumulating in final approval, it is clear that the issue was not identified at the time, and as such, we did not have prior knowledge of any discrepancies. After canvassing some neighborhoods around the city of Prospect Heights, I've noticed a couple situations and houses that had things similar to mine. One of them specifically was 101 West Hints Road. There is that's right at Sherwood and Hints Road, if you're familiar with it. The gentleman has built a addition on the top of the house, garage in the backyard, secondary driveway all the way to the back, and the whole secondary driveway is completely covered with a covered call it a patio, from the house all the way to the back garage. If you want to consider it a carport or whatever, it's covered, same situation, and he is now building a covered patio off the whole back of the house. Not sure if that has permit or not. It's being built as we speak, but it's exactly sizing of what I have on mine. I'm not sure if it's an approved thing.
Just, we're not supposed to, it says in the code, not considered, but the individual carport's gone and going away. He's building an accessory shed, and the other stuff he's gotten a permit for.
Okay. Fair enough. I was canvassing the neighborhoods, going through, talking to people, and that was one of the things that I noticed.
As for the overhang, I know that it had been discussed in the last meeting, why was this kind of an afterthought? And I don't know that we ever really got into that in the last meeting, but one of the reasons actually is it was something I really wanted. Skin cancer runs in both sides of our family, and we felt it was important for the health and protection of our family to have this feature in place, which is why we asked those questions to the inspector during the building stages. And we were informed by the city inspector during the construction of the garage that no permit was required for an installation of overhang. Again, we can't recall who exactly had the conversation, again, 7 years ago, but the questions were posed, whether it be from us or from our contractor, and it was stated that, as we've mentioned several times, that no permit would be required as long as there was no concrete underneath the overhang. Because we couldn't recall the exact timing of the installation, which was, I know, something that came up at the last meeting and was discussed earlier today, we spoke with our contractor again to seek clarity on the timelines and help us remember when, where, how, what. He actually reminded us, which we feel horribly that we forgot about this, that around the time of the final inspection, he suffered a heart attack, which delayed him from being able to complete the overhang at that time. As a result, the garage was left without gutters and soffits on the east side and was approved by the city inspector in that condition. It remained that way for multiple months due to our contractor's recovery, and he completed the overhang after the winter months had passed. So that lines up with what you were saying earlier about how you see the piers going in April, once he was able to then, after his recovery, and then go ahead and complete the work that the city inspector told us we could do. Over the past 7 years, the overhang has become a valued part of our home and the neighborhood, with many of our neighbors expressing their appreciation for it. While we understand that the current structure exceeds the city's typical allowances, it has never posed a problem in all of these years. In fact, it has been an asset to us and a welcome addition to the community. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the variance be granted, understanding the unique circumstances and the positive impact the overhang has had on our property and the neighborhood. We thank you for your consideration.
We also, the neighbor that is directly east of us, pretty much the only neighbor that would be envision of this overhang, wrote us a very nice letter, because they have kids. All of our neighbors, we're in the center of the neighborhood, and we
We're kind of the central meeting spot of the neighborhood.
All of our neighbors come over to our house, we all hang out, we talk, and we frequently sit underneath there and, sit in the shade. It's nice so you're not in the sun. And one of our neighbors was so nice to write this letter because they enjoy sitting underneath there because they don't have a covered patio in their yard.
Mrs. Pascucci, I know you were sworn in, but can you actually state your name for the record, please?
Sorry, my name is Gina Pascucci.
Thank you.
that is our testimony.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the board? I have a question for you from the last meeting. It was verbally stated that the roof was built, comments were made that the shingles look uniform and that it was built all at the same time.
That was the intention, as we stated, that was absolutely the intention. And then upon when, different things had to be ordered, right, and.
Try to remember
plans-
7 years ago. I don't remember what I did 7 years ago.
Well, yeah.
So I think you would remember if you had if you had a covered patio for 2 years after building a garage.
It wasn't 2 years.
Well, it's a year.
It was.
No, it was months.
It was, okay, so the garage was done the final was 8/28, and the overhang was put on the next spring, which would have been March, because he recovered it from a heart attack. And he reminded us of this, because we were talking to him, and he's like, holy cow, I remember
When we were
I had a
talking
heart
about
attack
the dates and stuff.
before I finished it. And he even reminded us that the inspector inspected it, and there was no gutters on the east side.
Because the whole point was for them to then continue it on as soon as he was able to, but because the garage was planned for inspection, they, went for the inspection and passed it as such. So, again, it was a long time ago. The intention was to try and get it done as soon as possible after, get it done as soon as possible after, but he had other materials he had to buy. He had other materials he had to order. It wasn't actually part of the initial plan, as we all know. And so, that was, taking some time, but the inspector came and approved it, as such, and did the final inspection, regardless of that portion being completed.
So where we stand today, it's, you apply for permit to build a garage, you build a garage, then your testimony is that you were advised by the inspector of different things, and then the final inspection happens, and I don't have the date, but I'm
8/28.
okay, so when the satellite picture was taken, so 8/28/2018 is the final inspection, and the hardship last month was that,
We were told by the city inspector that this could be built and that no permit was needed as long as there was no cement and that it was brick underneath there. He told us that, and that's one of your city inspectors, a city employee told us that.
Told you that, or told your contractor?
So there was a couple conversations. The one conversation, like I said in the last meeting, when it was noticed that the roof was too high, my contractor called me and said, you need to come over here, we have a problem. I left work, went over there, saw the issue, said, okay, how did this happen? We had figured out after multiple measurements that it was exactly the height of one brick. So the bricklayer laid one extra height of stacked brick on top. The contractor had built his where he needed to be, not looking at the height. So obviously we had talked, Dan Peterson and I had talked, and said, okay, we need to rip the roof off and redo it. It was talked about that, hey, while we're doing this, can we add the addition on there since we have to rip the whole roof off? And he said, yeah, as long as the.
To you or to the contractor?
Myself was involved at that conversation. At the final, I was not at the final.
This was done before the roof was redone?
When
This
the roof
conversation was getting redone.
When the roof was redone, after it was lowered, I was not at that final.
But the conversation with the inspector was, when you had the inspection and you realized the roof was too high, they asked you to and they asked you to tear the roof down and redo it. At that time, the conversation is, if you want to do this, you can, but there can't be any concrete. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So here's where I have trouble believing that. If I'm building a roof, knowing I'm going to overhang, you leave the joists 5 feet or 10 feet overhang. They're going to continue. You're going to see them in the picture.
So here's the thing, those joists were pre-made and they were special order from, I believe he got them from Menards. I don't remember, but I remember they were special order and they took a long time to get because he had ripped the roof off and then had to order the joists and wait for them to come in. And then he set the joists on there. I don't remember, it was 7 years ago, but from what I remember, the roofing was done but not completed because the inspector, Darrell Taylor, wanted to come measure the height. That his main concern was the height. And it wasn't, everything wasn't completely done because he said, I want to just measure the height. Everything else, I just saw you already had done it. So he was okay with it.
The problem I saw was, I thought last time we said the inspector missed it. I thought he finalized it off with that roof complete. I thought that's what we were getting.
The inspection report, as it's written, that I reviewed, just says final approval, complete. Nothing about additional roof, nothing about any other conditions of approval.
So when he completed it, the extension was not on the roof.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's, again, like, we're going back and we didn't, go back and remember all of those exact details of what happened and when and stuff, and that's when, like, that's why we reached back out to the contractor and said, do you remember the timelines of when the overhang was put on? And we were explaining how the final inspection was 8/28, and he's like, well, hold on a second, that's when I went through all my, medical situations. And that's why he's like, I couldn't finish it at that time. We had to delay it, to put it on at a later date. And, again, I said, we feel horrible even asking him because we feel bad that we didn't remember that. But that is in fact what, what took place and why it never actually got completed right at the time. As far as we know, we've had it almost the whole time. You know what I mean? In our memory, we don't remember it not having it on there, right?
And we were very shocked when Director Pearson, in my eyes, it was done weeks or months, a couple months at the most after. And then when he showed me the pictures, and obviously the pictures don't show an exact date, but after we were starting to go back and talking and trying to figure things out, we're like trying to figure out the exact date of when it was, and we know that it was in the spring, March, April roughly, because he had recovered from his heart attack. And he once I talked to him about that a couple times, and he tried remembering it, and he's like, I was going back and I remembered I had a heart attack then.
So is the framing, the trusses, is the framing for the roof continuous for the overhang? Because to Neil's point, you had the conversation when you had the trusses up for the roof. And at that point, you had a discussion with the inspector saying, can we extend it? So I thought last time you had said that the framing was continuous, which would have meant that the roof and the overhang were done at the same time.
Okay,
But now
maybe I
you're saying,
misunderstood
now
what
you're saying
continuous
that,
meant. So
that-
continuous
You're meaning,
would
like,
be
there's
the
no-
roof is continuously on the
right, that the framing, the
Framing level.
rafters, the joists, the framing of the roof itself is all integral. It's not like an add-on.
I mean,
Well, it's definitely,
we'd have to,
the joists are added onto the continuous roof, and I mean, I'm not a builder, so I don't know.
But is that true, or was it done all at the same time? Because
Well-
when we asked that question last time, you had said it was all done
well, yeah.
at the same time.
The
That
pictures show, obviously show that it was, done after. We just, like I said,
Yeah,
as far as, we don't remember not having the overhang, right? I mean, as far as we're concerned, that overhang has been part of the garage, because the fact that it took, him reminding us of this was like an eye-opener for us, that like, oh my God, you're right, like, and then he reminded us that, remember, I didn't finish the sides, it was without soffits, it was without gutters, because I had to then continue the job. Once, but then he couldn't do it right when he was planning on it. So as far as whether it was continuous or not, I mean, that's a question we would have to ask him and understand that whole side of it. That's way beyond my level of understanding.
You stated that they were ordered at Menards. Are they a truss or are they joists?
fab, it was a, I don't know.
They're
the
truss,
name of
they're
it.
trusses.
Trusses is like an A-frame that has the bracketry and everything, that's a truss?
They're
Okay.
truss.
I'm not a builder, so.
My other concern that I have is, I've built numerous garages for clients in Prospect Heights, and Inspector Taylor has basically inspected most of them. And he made, on a final, we put a door on a service door on a garage because the client did not want a service door, and I felt that in the event that the garage door failed, they had no way of getting in. And so I put a side door on, and he physically made me put a concrete pad. He was very, very in tune with inspections, and I find it really hard to believe that he gave you the approval to do that when you have concrete columns that would need to be inspected. They would need to meet frost, and/or since you're in a flood-prone area or a floodway, they may even need it to be the same type of screw,
Helical.
yeah, as far, and he would have addressed that. I find it really hard to believe that he gave you the approval to do that.
I mean, that's why, I mean, we would have preferred to put concrete underneath, you know.
Not a concrete pad.
And that is why. I mean,
Yeah, but you have structural piers carrying the roof load.
No, what I'm saying is the reason why we have, not have concrete under there is because of the direction he gave
Well,
us.
I understand that, but that doesn't solve the structural integrity of that roof being held up by those columns.
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, they'd be allowed to put concrete there, just not the roof.
Correct. In a floodway, it's not, concrete is fine if it's approved and it's not elevated, it doesn't cause any particular damming condition. The driveway for the garage that you got the variation for, the back patio area, even the pool concrete is allowed. So those are systems, but they do need to be taken a look at.
Yeah, and I'm just simply bringing that up as the reason, you can see we're fans of concrete. You know, if we have a preference over, you know, and the only reason you can see in that spot that we don't have concrete are those, and that was specifically because of what was told us as to the conditions of
It's
not.
the only brick that I have in my whole house. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have done brick, I would have done concrete. He advised me, do this, don't do that.
Well, the other thing is, you're stating the gutters weren't done, they're, based on this aerial from 2018, it looks like your gutters are on both sides of that road.
According to.
Based on the aerial that I'm looking at, I see
Okay.
gutters on both sides of that house, so.
We'd have to talk to, because he told us he never finished those.
So-
He told us that he left the gutters off the one side.
Yeah, you can clearly see them, I mean, I could see them from, they
Maybe
live
it
in
was maybe there was a portion
Maybe
that
the
he.
white
Can we bring up,
wood is
exhibit
looking
21?
like gutters.
21, thank you.
Exhibit 21, 2018, you can kind of see the white outline on each side. And you have white gutters on the road, so.
The gutters are flat.
Picture I saw them.
No,
Oh, actually, no,
Not
the
that.
gutters were,
no, we've painted
Are
them
white.
since
yeah,
then.
you're right, sorry.
Um,
I forgot about that.
Did Inspector Taylor with the roof, because I, for plan reviews and the amount of years of plan review, talking about a structural change to the roof would have been an amendment to the existing permit. And I know Daryl over time, in all the years I worked with him, made other individuals give revised roof trusses because that's a structural load that is required to be looked at. So I'm just, did he mention at any point in time that
Never
you?
mentioned that to me. I had asked if we can do an overhang off the side of there, and he said, you're already taking the roof down, you can do an overhang.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I asked him if I could put concrete there, and he said, no, you can't put concrete, you're gonna have to put brick.
And again, some of the particulars, when we went, you know, asked more questions, you know, to the point of who spoke to Daryl Taylor about certain things, you know, as far as the conversation goes, some of the specifics and particulars might have been asked by our contractor. And that's why, like I said, we you know, I know I wasn't there, but I know what you tell me and stuff. And so it's possible that some of the particulars were then told to our contractor and not necessarily to you specifically, but that's the point, that's just the point we're trying to make, is the way we did, the reason why we did it the way we did it is because of the guidance that was given to us. And I know at the last meeting, it was mentioned about several mistakes around this time that Daryl Taylor was made. I believe there was even a time where he came to our house for an inspection and brought the wrong property's information.
Yeah, that was one thing that I forgot to mention last time. So during one or two of the inspections, he came to our house to do an inspection on our garage. And I believe I had a conversation with you about this. He came to our garage to do the inspection and said, holy cow, this is, everything on here is wrong, this isn't in the right, everything was wrong. Well, what are you talking about? And I was at one of the inspections, and I looked at the paperwork and I said, Daryl, you're at the wrong location. You needed to be off of, what was the name of the street? Wall Street. They were building the garage at the exact same time, similar to ours, obviously different sizing.
And it's happened twice.
And it happened 2 times where he was coming to inspect our garage, but had the packet and all the information for the other person's garage. And I brought that to Director Peterson's attention, because it happened 2 times. So he was very mixed up. And to be honest with you, I don't think he was in the right state of mind, is my personal opinion.
Who did the piers?
The
Are
helical piers?
the helical piers that are on the
The
overhang? or the-
helical piers, I sent you the invoice.
No, the question is the piers that are holding up the roof extension, because the helical pier report identifies the locations as outlined by Joseph Meyer's report. Okay, and those locations which, you know, again, all that paperwork is wrong because it was designed for a 720 square foot garage, not a
870.
or 872, 3, 4, whatever that number is. So there are a lot of confusions, and based on, you know, the experiences of plan review and the structural loads, the floodplain issues, which he was very familiar with, there's some inconsistencies that I'm observing.
Do you remember who did the helical piers with the overhang?
They're not helical, right?
I'm asking if they
Oh.
are. Are they helical piers?
The one for the overhang, I believe those were not helical piers. We did not call out Joseph Meyer again to do those.
So those are just
were-
concrete bases?
I believe that's what he did. I
Oh,
don't
dear.
know how far would he go, 6 feet
I mean,
down
I would
or
rather,
whatever.
if there's questions like that, I would rather check with our contractor to make sure, like, what we're saying is
So-
accurate.
And that's the question, that's the hard part, because all of these additions require inspections. We have requirements for pier depths, snow loads, wind load, upheave, especially in soils that are wet conditioned soils, being in a flood way, or floodplain, excuse me. And so I'm, you know, to not call for inspections when you've had inspections for every other part of the job, it's just something I'm trying to go back to. And all I can go back to is what the paperwork says, and there is none.
And I'll,
Prints for the original permit?
Yes.
For the garage?
Yes.
What is it?
If you look in
Original packet.
the original packet, I believe has
I
most
guess
of them.
another question is, if, let's say Daryl did say you can do the overhang, are you saying he said you can do this without any further inspections?
that, he said we do not need a permit.
Yeah. And
Okay,
it wasn't
permit and
told to
inspections
us-
are two different things.
It wasn't told to us that we needed any other inspection. He had to hand us the final.
So you guys have gone through this process and now are digging mole holes, and you guys just took it upon yourselves, say, okay, well, we don't need inspections on these, but we got every other one inspected? Do you see how that doesn't jive a little?
It jives for me because as far as I'm concerned, inspections go with permits, right? Like,
Oh,
I'm
you
not-
have multiple
I'm not-
inspections, and you have one permit.
I'm not, as a regular homeowner, these are things that I wouldn't know, like.
But your contractor's doing this, right? So your contractor should know,
Sure,
hey,
sure,
listen,
but-
we got these other piers inspected, we got the foundation inspected. I'm putting concrete structure here, I need to get it inspected. Every contractor knows that. I'm in construction, that's just,
And
it's
that's
so.
why, and that's why if
you
there's
have-
specific questions like that, I
you
would
have-
rather refer back to him and not go off of us, you know, layman's knowledge.
Right, I just saying, you have
What he did.
two things that are hard for us to understand. One,
Yeah.
that you got permission to do this, and let's say, we have no one to corroborate besides you guys, your contractor's not here. And let's say we do get past that point, Then the next point is, all this work that was done for the addition was done, which now we can prove was done after the garage. There was no inspections called for it. That to me seems another problem right there itself. No, so now we're dealing with the structure that we don't know is built correct. No one inspected it, right?
Understood, yes.
Can we
Go to
Yeah,
to the,
I completely understand that. I mean,
Exactly what you're saying.
it's not,
What I would
Here, I
say
gotta
too,
go
again, is,
upstairs.
just going back to that time, it was brought up that there were several errors
I can
made,
go
not only
grab
with
the
our
current plans.
property and what we were doing, but several other properties at the time.
That-
So,
which exhibit's that?
I know a lot of saying,
Last.
everybody finds it hard to
Yeah.
believe that he would say this, do that, but at the last meeting, it was mentioned about several
Okay.
different things that were brought up at the same time, that he was
Yeah, pull
making
those up,
similar
pull those
mistakes.
up.
So I
Which,
just- I'm
which
just
gets
wanting to
us maybe past the first hurdle. But how do you
What's
get,
that?
that might get us past the first hurdle of, okay, maybe he did say this,
Yeah.
which I'm not saying inflated, but that doesn't absolve the contractor of getting inspections done. And it's proving this is a structure that should have been, that was done. That, to me, okay, let's say, for say, we get past point one. How do we get past point two, that this contractor that you've hired has already gone through the city, knows the process in the city, has got every inspection done up to this point, but no more inspections were done? You can't, there's,
made mistakes, too.
and there's no reasons for it.
mistakes.
That to me, and it's the same contractor, right? You say it's the same contractor, had Hardtech come back, same guy, knows the process in the city. How would he not know to get inspections done here? Why would he get inspections done? It makes no sense.
I think because the final was done and it was talked about, I don't know. I can't speak for my contractor because
I personally didn't think that, I
Can
know
we,
you're saying the difference
can-
between my knowledge and his knowledge are two completely different things, but.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can we take a 2-minute break while Director Peterson tries to retrieve? I've asked for the original plans that were submitted for the original permit. I just would like to see those plans.
It'll take me just a couple minutes.
Oh, yeah, yeah, let's resume at 7:55.
If you would like, I can explain what I just got.
Yes, please.
All right,
Do we need to put those as exhibits?
we will give an
Yes.
exhibit number based on, what's the next exhibit number? That will be 25, probably. Okay, in what I was asked to retrieve, we will list as exhibit number 25, and this is a 15-page group exhibit of the original permit approval documents that were submitted by the applicant for the permit. Yep, back in, it looks like February of 18. The cover page is the Plata survey that was approved per zoning ordinance 1722, which was for the driveway variation and the new 720 square foot detached garage that was the max permitted by the ordinance. And so that was what was approved. The rest of the architectural plans were prepared by Mike Aiello and Aiello Architectural Design, which shows the dimensions and the approximate locations of the helical piers on page 2 of his foundation plan and elevation plan. And then page 3 of his plans shows the wall construction, the piers, the foundation system, and the roof as designed for the original garage at 720. The rest of the next set of documents are prepared by Joseph Meyer Engineering, and this is related to the structural analysis for the helical pier system. And so it shows that this was designed again for a 20 by 36 detached garage, 720 square feet. It gives all the calculations, which were reviewed by our engineers and approved. Then on page The second to the last page is the civil engineering plan as approved by Steve Perez, the city engineer, dated February 27th, 18th again, showing the elevations, the floodplain, the size of the garage, as approved by the city engineer. So this original plan was viewed by the zoning board for the variation hearings, approved by council for the variation for the driveway, and then received both city staff. Daryl Taylor was the plan reviewer, and approved as submitted because it met and complied with the conditions of the variation ordinance and the city code for detached garage. The next set of documents we'll take as exhibit number 26, and this is, again, the Joseph Engineer layout for the helical pier, and then the pier installation report from Ramjack, indicating the PSI, the torque, and the depth of the helical piers to support it. Let it be known that all of the piers that were installed were set to a depth of 42 feet to reach the...
42 inches.
Or, excuse me, 40 inches.
No, it's 42 feet.
It's 42 feet.
Is it?
It's 42 feet. If it was 42 inches, it would have been a standard concrete pier. These were driven because of the soil conditions of the piers to reach a stable condition.
Bedrock.
And that's just to meet a 2,000 PSI soil bearing capacity, which basically is the bare minimum for a non-habitable, single-story structure. Anything over that would require anywhere from 2,500 to 4,000 PSI of bearing capacity. At this point in time, again, I have no records indicating any changes, and Daryl did review this. I went through the plan with them at one point in time to review, but because the plan as submitted complied, there was no other necessity to issue it as to be built. How it got to 24 feet wide by 36 inch wide, I can't tell you. All I know is I've got an inspection report. Typically, in my 32 years of experience, when that happens, and I've seen it happen only a handful of times with unscrupulous contractors and owners, that they get the inspection, then they change the form layout. I'm not saying that happened in this case, but that's what I've experienced. Because if you've got a set of plans for 20 by 40 and it gets 4 feet wider, it's hard to explain. The city has already said we're going to accept the 24 because that's what the records indicate we approved, because there was no
Because that
indication.
work was done prior to final inspection.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's an explanation of, based on our records, it should have been 20 by 36, not 24. And so going forward, I don't know how, but this is the construction plans that we use to go forward.
Yeah, I would have to say that you can't go 4 feet wide without planning it. Helical piers are just gonna get laid out. That's where you start. And if they're started at 20 feet, the garage is gonna be built 20 feet wide. If you start them out at 24 feet, the garage is going, that's laid out that way. Then the truss has gotta get ordered 24 feet wide. This was not done in accident. This 24-foot wide garage is approved, but that was done purposely. I'm not saying by who, but it was done it wasn't done by accident. Because there's just too many steps that has to get to 24.
Can you speak to that?
To be honest with you, my contract, it was obviously a mistake on the contractor and the inspector.
It was definitely a mistake on the inspector not catching.
Right.
I don't know if it was a mistake on the contractor or, yeah, so I'm just,
So,
being in this field, you don't put helical piers in. They are calculated, put together, they are measured, that's a system to put those together. So to go to 24 feet from 20, that's a driven decision. to get trusses ordered at 24 feet, it's a driven decision. I mean, this is.
And I'm assuming a contractor would not pour extra 150 square feet of concrete free of charge without a direction. So what I'm seeing from the applicant is that, so here's where my struggle is, big struggle. In the first meeting, we had no evidence other than the applicant's testimony. And,
You had the building report that the final.
right, so we have the testimony and we have the final inspection. And at the last meeting, it was said that we were instructed to do this by the inspector, and that's what we were supposed to base our decision on. Today, we have evidence, we have hard evidence, pictures, we have inconsistencies, and the testimony from the applicant has changed to, I don't know, it was the contractor that did it. So this is where I struggle, because now
I'm not a builder, so
I understand
I'm not sitting out there
that, sir, but what I also understand is that if there is work done at a property without a permit, it is the responsibility of the homeowner. And a lot of this work, based on the evidence that we have, which is the satellite photos, was done without a permit. So when I'm looking at the standards for variation, now I have real issues, because if I try to find a hardship, I can't. Because the,
Do you need this? Do you need
oh, no, I don't. I have a hard time finding a hardship because the hardship was self-created. You decided to, you or the contractor, it doesn't really matter, it's your property. You decided to have work done without a permit. And now you're asking us, 7 years later, to approve a variation for something that you have done without a permit.
Correct. I mean, I'm sorry that you struggle to understand and see our hardship for something that was built.
Well, maybe you
7 years.
can tell me, so what is the hardship?
Our
We were
hardship is,
told it could be done.
exactly,
Right.
our hardship is that we were told it could be done.
We've gotten
And-
permits for every other, major thing that we've done here, save for that concrete pad that we did not know, had any idea would need one. There was a concrete pad that was supposed to be part of the original plans, as you could see, was on here, that we never actually did. So instead.
And why is that?
We,
Maybe because you wanted to put a
Because we
patio
didn't
there.
talk to him
Listen, all
about
I see inconsistencies. So I see a garage growing from 720 to 872. 150 square feet is a lot of feet. These plans were made they're very clear. It's whoever made the plans, and I'm assuming you as somebody to make these dimensions are exactly the maximum size of the garage that you allowed. And that's why you were issued a permit.
correct.
And the variation originally.
That's correct.
Correct, but there were 4 different levels of inspections that, I don't know if the mistake happened when.
Yeah, so listen.
No,
what-
look, hold on,
what-
I just, let me just finish. I don't know if the mistake then happened when something happened with the height of the roof, and then that's when, things got changed. I just don't, that was the only error, obviously he found that error, right? He found the error that the height of the roof was off by mere inches, but yet didn't notice that the helical piers were 24 feet. I'm not a builder, I
So,
don't.
which we agree with you, he did not catch the helical piers, for paperwork, he did not catch the helical piers being
Yeah.
off. But you have to agree, that was a decision made by someone. Someone decided, okay,
Multiple measurements and multiple inspections. There was 4 or 5 inspections, the helical piers, the pre-pour. Looking back, there was
correct,
5.
so he
And I
missed
don't know,
that.
Maybe our original, maybe.
He
Is it
missed
possible
them.
that our original
But how does,
bond was
how do you,
24? I don't know.
he
Like,
didn't lay out your helical piers. You understand that? He didn't lay them out. He came to inspect them. Somebody laid them out at 24 feet. 12 feet on center, 2 sets, 24
Yeah.
feet. Is that a 10 feet on center? They were laid out at 12 feet on center to get to 24 feet. That was a decision made by somebody. That was a decision. And then on top of that, trusses were ordered at 24 feet.
The first trusses were stick built. I do remember that, because that was I believe that was Dan, correct me if I'm not wrong, that was a 4 on 12, 5 on 12?
Whatever the plan.
The original was, yeah, I'm not a
I-
builder,
the-
but
the-
I think
the
that's
original
a-
plan-
Even if they were stick built, they were ordered at 24 feet. That, I mean, you have to order 12-foot joists to put them together. They're not ordered at 10 feet, they came up, oh, we're 2 feet short. All these decisions were made. So there was conscious effort, there was a conscious decision made to make this a 24-foot garage, which we're past. The city said, okay, look, we didn't catch it, it was a mistake on our end, we're agreeing this. The board here in general, like this, speak for myself, I was really pushing for this, to get the overhang done. Because you still at least fell under the 870 square foot rule that all your structures get to. You've kind of already used that up to get to the garage. Now in your testimony last time we're here, it was clear to me, you guys built this when you built the garage. That was clear testimony. And I felt a little betrayed, like now I'm finding with pictures and we're seeing that, okay, it wasn't, it was done afterwards, it was calculated. So I'll be the one to call us black and white. That to me is like, that's just not right. You know, say now that, you could say
I
what.
originally did say it was within a couple weeks or a couple months after, I don't remember exact time.
So,
Right, and
and
to say it's calculated,
I
think-
still don't see how you get past without doing any inspections. With a contractor that knows to do inspections. So there's just too many
Again,
things,
but
and the contractor's not
I
here.
can't speak to why he didn't
But-
choose to get the
but
inspection.
he's not
He's
here.
not here, right, he's not
Right,
here.
so we can't just say, okay, since he's not here, we can forget.
No,
this.
I forget it. What I'm saying is that there's questions being asked of us that we can't answer.
Okay,
is what
but
is what
these
I'm
are
saying.
questions we're asking you because he's not here, so we have to ask you, the applicant.
Right, and
Right,
so I
so-
guess, do we continue this so we can get these answers from him or bring him in? I don't know what the answer is there, but I know that we don't have that detailed knowledge of, we tried to get as many answers from him as we could, and that's why we got the timelines. One of the things I wanted to see actually was in Exhibit 21 it's a very dark picture, and what we were talking about is we were almost certain that those piers were actually put in a lot sooner than what you're showing.
Which
in
is April.
of, I don't know, is it grass because you can't see it? Is it shade? I don't know why you can't see them
And I
there.
don't think the grass was fully grown and there was dirt.
But to
Your
say
helical
that,
pier
to say
plans
that
don't
we
show.
purposely built this, 6-7 months later, that was not the intention.
Well, so there's two. Your helical plans, the report you have for helicals do not show those helical piers. So one problem is you have 42
Right,
feet
because
structure.
that was not part of the
Okay, so
original
let me-
plan. It was not part of the original plan. It was an afterthought. And
potentially
that's
have-
why we talked to Daryl Taylor. And
But-
I guess that's what I'm trying to say, even about the one concrete pad that going in there. We weren't gonna put a concrete pad in there once we realized we were gonna put on an overhang, right? Why would we put a concrete pad just to put pavers in, right? I mean, that's why we didn't do those things.
Ma'am, to me, he said not to use concrete, you use concrete for columns, to support the
No,
columns.
he meant a concrete pad.
I don't know what he meant, but we keep saying we keep blaming this guy that's not here so he could have made some mistakes. I don't doubt it. I see a lot of inconsistencies, and
But also, you have to keep in mind,
How do we get past this next time we want to
So-
do something? We ask an inspector a question, and we're given advice on how
you
to do
document,
something,
you
and,
document.
I'm sorry?
You can document.
you know
right?
how.
But
you know
realize
how-
that, but let's talk about this.
It's
All
not-
your whole garage, your roof right now is supported off helical piers except the overhang. That's a structural issue within itself. You have 42-foot helical piers to
For
support
7
it.
years, it's never,
That doesn't make it a
Never changed,
non-structural
never
issue. I mean, that just means it's lasted 7 years, but it doesn't meet code. That's another problem within itself.
Well, can it get inspected now? I mean,
You
is that
have to
something
put
we
in
can do?
helical piers for that. That's gonna be part of yours. If you designed this originally, those 4 additional, would have helical piers. They would. That would-
Just for the roof?
We don't
Yes.
know. We're not structural engineers.
there's not much
So-
load to
so-
it.
It still has the same snow load as the rest of
Yes.
the roof. It actually carries more on the eaves than it does on the top of the roof.
Yeah.
So because you're in a floodway with questionable soils, those 4 piers on the east side of the house that hold up the overhang are going to move at different rates, and you're going to get fluctuation with frost and thaw movement, and eventually either the roof structure will fail or that it will start to sink because the ground cannot hold those 42, and it's going to start coming down again, the garage roof will fail. And those are things that as much as Daryl may have missed or not, because I don't have the records this one way or the other, this is one thing that he, in the 7 years that he worked for me, did catch on, not just, not on this property, according to your testimony, but on others, because we went through this plan because it is in a floodway, or floodplain. We did go through this because of the variation request and the maximum size. Now, how during the inspections, things were missed, I can only go by what was written on the report and what the approved plans are. And we've gotten past the size of the garage, we're
No,
gonna
not
accept
that
it,
one.
but the
21.
issue comes in is that garage, as it currently is right now,
Earlier picture.
there's no plans to support
No.
its structural integrity. If they're just joists sistered to the existing roof rafters, are they fully ordered truss systems, or that, and I know your contractor, you know, he's done work in town before, he's done work for you. All of his stuff is planned and is built to a set of approved plans. So without approved plans for the new roof, how do you know what's being built? And he knows they have to be inspected, he knows roofs have to be inspected.
Who's the contractor?
The contractor, that's one page I didn't print.
Iola, was
They
it?
probably know.
No, Iola was the architect.
Oh.
Can we go back to 21 real quick, though? Not
Who
20.
was your
already-
contractor?
It was Joe's Construction.
Joe's.
So, again, it's very dark, but is there a way to zoom in on the September 27th, 2018? Yeah. It's so hard. It's all.
If you look at
There's-
that top corner, it looks like the grass and the dirt is still there.
Of
but
course, it's a
those
horrible
piers-
picture.
It's dark, and you can't see it because it's shadow. But those piers were,
I mean, that's what we're trying to, that's the one thing we're trying to make sense of is, you know, when those piers were actually put in, because if we're not mistaken, they were not put in after the winter, they were put in earlier because of the intent to do this.
Before final
Yeah, but-
inspection or
but
after
they're
final
not-
inspection?
Possibly, I
But
have
that,
to.
the
They're
contract,
not on the engineering.
but not even that, that would contradict what they said. They got approval to go over the overhang when they were
Yes,
doing
but
the
they're also-
framing. Piers are in at this point.
Right, it was not part of the original plan, so they wouldn't be on any plans. We were given the advice, no, as long as you do this, this,
But
and
what-
this,
what is
you
this?
can
This is
put
an
it in.
installation
So we
report,
didn't
right?
go back
This is
to
where
re-permit and
But
Piers that they.
You understand,
they drove
the first thing you do is
they
helical
a snap
piers.
report on.
If you didn't get approval for the overhang till after
I get
the
it. So
framing
this is
was taken down and up,
after,
your helical
there
piers
is-
are in at this point.
Actually, there's 13 here. I don't know,
Inspector to
at the
do the
potential
overhang.
12.
Correct.
The verbal approval you said you got was when you guys tore the roof off and had to reframe it. At this point, your helical piers are in. At this point, your helical piers, your foundation's in, your masonry's done. You said the masonry was the reason you guys were tall. So if you put the helical piers in at this point, then the plan was up for the overhang was done at that
Even
point
just
too.
to add more off to the side, I mean, they were done for the structure of the garage. They wouldn't have been done yet for the structure of the overhang.
They would have
because
done them
that was-
all at one time. is what I'm saying. Helical piers are.
The inspection report doesn't show them.
That's the installation for helical piers, so the helical piers
Your
didn't go
inspection
in.
The
report doesn't show-
installation
Okay, so
report
you're
of-
saying, that they weren't put in at that date of 8/28. Okay, I don't believe that they were put in when you showed this on April.
So could I ask a couple questions as like the non-builder on the panel?
Join the club.
Because I'm looking through for a garage, this seems like an awful detailed, just seems like there's so much on it for a garage.
yeah, I was.
Because it's in a
I was put
floodway.
through a lot to get this garage, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I almost pulled everything,
Yeah.
because of the cost, and then
The piers?
last minute, we said, okay, and then we got to the piers, and we had to stop for a while, because originally the piers were told, if I remember correctly, 16 feet, and then when they started doing them,
And digging.
because we found out after the fact that our whole neighborhood was a dump ground in the 80s, 70s and 80s for when they redid 53. And we found out from the guy that owned that property, it was a dump ground, and he let everybody dump all the crap there. So it's all broken concrete, it's all, I could show you pictures and tops of pictures. When we dug out the pool, And when we also dug out the garage foundation, there was 10-foot long curves from Route 53 when it was.
So
done.
then I have a question,
can
a
I-
follow-up to that, Jerry, excuse me one second. If that was the debris and material they were finding, what constituted the contractor to just put in concrete piers without an inspection to a depth that, if it was done to our city code, is only 42 inches? Because that will not hold that roof structure up with those soils conditions as you described them.
What you're, I guess I
The
don't
overhang,
understand
the
question.
the piers for the overhang, you had a contractor do that roof system, you've stated that. You've stated that they put in the concrete pads that went in to hold that will hold the posts up for the overhang, that then get covered over by either pavers or, it's hard to see in the picture, the covering. But the rest of the garage, it's down to 42 feet because of the bad soils, yet the contractor only puts in assumed to be 42 inches of
Well,
concrete
that's
to
what I'm saying.
hold that up.
How do we know that?
I don't know, because there was no inspection, there was no permit, there was no plan, there was no nothing,
I don't know
so,
what the proper depth is.
42 is your standard
42
depth.
is standard.
That's your standard depth if you have a regular, that just gets frost.
Okay.
So your house doesn't
Again,
adjust
I
for
have
frost.
no idea how deep
so the
those are
question
underneath.
comes,
That's another concern though. You
I'm
understand?
sorry, Jerry.
Again,
So
the,
my other,
the-
oh, I'm sorry.
oh, so I just want to clarify this because we keep throwing numbers. The installation report shows only piers for the garage. They don't show the helicals for the overhang.
The installation report?
Yes, the installation
Which-
report.
That was on what date?
It's not dated, but this is the report that your contractor stated, this is what the results were for the installation of
Right,
the helical
because that
piers.
was part of the original plan.
I
That
get-
was not.
Okay,
you
okay,
understand
so,
what
so
we're
can
saying?
we,
Like,
so can we definitely say that the
It is
helicals,
April 2018.
Yeah, so that was part of the original plan for
okay,
the garage
so,
before we
so
decided.
this tells us
Yeah.
that the helicals for the overhang were not poured at that time. They were poured later. And because,
We don't know what kind of foundation.
There is no
it has.
and because they were poured later, they were poured after the final inspection, we don't know if they were poured to code.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm saying I don't know exactly when those were poured.
Well,
All
okay,
have
can
is some-
we say that they were poured after the final inspection?
I can't say that, because I
The
don't.
picture
know.
showed that.
Pictures,
Okay.
in the picture that they're there, and it looks like they were there before, but it's too dark from the one shading picture to show, and you can't exactly see if they're there or not there. I don't remember 7 years ago.
Okay, but if we look at the installation report, we don't have them,
Okay.
right? And the installation report was done right before the final inspection.
So, okay, so maybe there is a report out there that you can get us.
This is the report that came from the applicant who got it from the
Right.
installer.
According
Who are stating
the
they
plan before
installed
we
the
decided
piers
to put an overhang.
per the engineer's
So now this,
design.
the odd thing is this does show 13 piers,
Correct.
which I don't understand.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Your installation thing
Yeah.
shows 13 piers.
Yeah, because they wanted to add extra piers.
To the
They added
garage.
extra piers to it, and again, I
Added-
don't remember where they were added, I just know that they, when they came in there, they said that they added extra piers.
It's one, it's one. Your plan showed 12. So they showed one extra pier. I don't know where it is, but it's not 4 extra. Okay, so 4 extra would maybe say, okay, your garage overhang has piers in it, which then would also take away the argument that the inspector gave you approval because you guys planned this ahead of time. So it's kind of a catch-22 there,
So
so.
why would there be?
They may have found a spot that needed
One extra.
one extra when they were in the field.
I don't remember.
Listen, I will testify under oath as I am. When he wanted this garage, right, there was no talk of overhang with his first dream, right? The first dream of the garage, okay? He did the due diligence of what needed to be done, what sizes, what could be approved, what permit, you know, you could see the amount of work that went in through. I mean, this was for a garage, for an uninhabitable space. I never in my life would have imagined that this much work would go into it. So you can imagine that when the cost and just the heartache that we had to go through when we were told that it was too tall or whatever, the mistake was made with the concrete, you know, thing or whatever. And then at that point is when we said, look, if we're gonna be making these changes, right, all the staff is gonna have to come back and work and redo, extra costs, extra this, whatever. I said, That's when I personally brought up the idea of a porch overhang. I said, I'm like, is this a big deal? I shouldn't say I'm a woman, that's a bad thing to say, but I just want what I want, right? You know, and can we do it or can we not do it? It was a simple question, you know, and so the question was asked, you know, what would be involved in putting a porch overhang? Is this something that we need to go all the way back to the beginning for? Do we have to start over from scratch? What do we need to do? No, we were told, no, you do not need to do that. You do not need a permit. I understand what you're saying about the contractor doing inspections. I can't speak to why he didn't do it. Maybe in his mind, he was thinking, maybe it should have gotten, you know, maybe he doesn't think that, you know, Daniel Taylor's right, and you're like, but hey, if he's saying go ahead, you don't have to do it, then we're gonna go ahead and do it. I mean, people aren't, if someone's told you don't need a permit, you're not gonna go and get a permit, right? I mean, no one does that. Like, no, I'm gonna go get a permit anyway. No one does that. So if you're told you don't need
The
one.
hard thing I'm having to believe here is because Daryl, as the plan reviewer, knows that that's the maximum, and any additional structure to the roof is gonna have to be, any changes to that roof system will have to be reviewed to make sure that the roof system changes, whether it's gonna be
Why didn't you tell us
stipulated.
that? I mean.
I can't speak
yeah,
to that,
exactly.
but
You know,
knowing the procedure, seeing the review, seeing the detail that was here,
Yeah.
this should have the same detail for the addition. And that's the struggling part, because he would have, I know he's asked for it for other projects, I've seen that in other cases. What happened here, all I can say is that at the time, he approved inspections for what he saw in the field and filed it for what he saw in the field. And everything after that, we have no record of, we have no statement of.
But there was
And therefore,
multiple mistakes made throughout the whole
well,
process.
Yes.
On many parts.
But this one can't be proven. That's the
What?
problem. Again, I'll go back to, if this overhang was done, and you had the inspection report, which you had that, and it was dated post that overhang, to me, that's, you have a hardship. And we have standards we have to vote on, and this was his getting at earlier. And this falls, if we give this to one, we have to give it to all. So we have to find a way to give you hardship. Listen, you guys are lovely people, we're neighbors to a point, right? So we all want to try to make this work, but we have to find a reason to let you do this. So the next person that comes in can't say, oh, you let them do it. There's got to be a standard that's met. And we're struggling to find a standard when the 10 standards we have that say, here's your hardship, here's the reasons you can give a variance.
But if it wasn't for me getting a pool permit, not knowing that this was not approved or
Yeah.
part of it, thinking it was, I went into this applying for a permit, paying more taxes for permits, because anytime you do that, you pay more taxes. I put in a new driveway, I put in the front porch overhang, I put in the garage, I pay a lot
And
of
again,
taxes on
and
this
then,
house.
and again, when the
wouldn't
shipping
do it if I
container was
didn't know.
noticed, you know, because that was, we were using it as a
Well-
shed, we were using that for storage.
but I'm gonna back up and say, you were told specifically you had to have flow-throughs in the garage for flood control, because you're in a floodplain.
Which are there.
You put a shipping container that has no flood
That's on the
passage.
backside.
It doesn't matter, the whole property is a floodplain.
And I will say
And
that
that
the flooding
can't-
situation in all of our neighbors' yards have improved since our backyard went in, just
But
so we
you-
can all, because of what we did in that
Do you
garage.
remember 2017, the amount of water that came through there?
Yes, but
But
Okay.
it never got that.
Under-
listen, we have
understood-
Lake Pascucci, we have pictures from every year when it rains, how
I-
bad it gets, and it has never, you know, gotten up to that point
Under-
anymore.
Understood, but you had to go through, Mike Aiello, we sat through and
Yeah.
went through the application process to meet the FEMA control. Putting a storage container there does not meet any FEMA regulations.
And as soon as you said to remove it, he removed
And,
it.
and so, therefore, I understand the need and the desire to put it in, but the conditions of building in a floodplain restricted that. And that was communicated very clearly at the time. And, we sat in the meeting in the conference room with Mike and went through all of those.
I mean,
so
I don't-
then-
Okay, I didn't know anything about
And I
not being
think-
able to put any
So
additional
the
storage back there,
the
but.
issue comes in is there's no documentation for the second half of this project. And that's the struggle point. And, not that we're not saying you're trying to hide it, we're not trying to say that, but for them to be able to come to a conclusion of a standard to approve it is very difficult. Because you were given the standards of approval, the application, we went through those. And we've been trying to find a way to get that to work, to summarize what
I
the
mean, we're-
chairman was.
Well, that's what we,
Clearly
that's
not
what we
trying to
try,
hide it.
that's
I
what
mean,
we try.
Our backyard is very open to the park district,
So,
so everybody can see it,
And
so there's nothing
to
we're
his
trying to
point,
hide.
you're saying, well, this wouldn't have even come to fruition if you didn't apply for a permit for the pool, which I understand,
Correct.
but it's here. And we can only vote on what we have in front of us.
And it's been there for 7 years, and it's
Right,
never affected a single person.
and I understand that, as a homeowner, I understand that. But as a member of the zoning board, we have to follow us, and we try to be loose with it as best as we can. Some more than others, me one of them, but I was hanging my hat last time on the fact that this was done at a certain
appreciate you.
point.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean,
Correct.
we understand everything you're saying. At
You'll
the end of the
have
day,
no record of
it's
a permit,
a porch
regardless of what
overhang,
they're said or
and we
not.
understand about the safety issues.
It's not a
And
livable condition, it's not affecting
no one's
anybody.
living there, I
That's
don't want,
ours.
you know, I mean, it's a beautiful porch overhang that,
Create shade.
yeah, I mean, it's just, this isn't, I guess I just feel like it's, a big deal is being made. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't respect, you know, the codes and stuff like that. I just feel that something that has been there now for 7 years and has not proven to be any problem whatsoever is just,
Yeah, we understand your guys' points on this. We fully understand those. We're just looking at this as, this is, like we always tell our children, there's big problems and there's little problems. This is a little problem in my eyes. To you guys, it might be different. This doesn't cause any type of hardship. Nobody around me does it cause any type of issue where it's affecting them personally, physically, financially, mentally, in any way, aesthetically, in any which way, in any way. That's the only way I could look at this, is it doesn't affect a single person or create any other problems down the road.
Joey, I'm going to read this. This is standard number 9. No non-conforming uses of neighboring land structures or buildings in the same district, no permitted uses of land structures or buildings in other districts shall be considered for issuance of this. You brought up 101 Hints, who, by the way, we ordered him to remove the carport. I've had other people that have gotten permits for garages that next year they've added 300 square feet that we've had them cut off. So it is an issue to follow the zoning ordinances and rules. Those are the established guidelines that were set by the zoning code by the city councils back whenever.
well,
Okay.
can that get amended?
Well,
Can we work
that's
to
to
that?
his point, though, is like you're saying, it's not, like, the carport's not affecting anyone, but there's
Yeah,
a standard that
it's not
has,
affecting
but it has to be removed because it doesn't meet the standards of the city. That's just what it is.
I think
And
that
we
the
like
city
to-
should relook at some of the ordinances and look at them
Which-
differently.
But unfortunately, that's enough for debate today.
Hey, Joey, you're living in a town, the only town that I've ever worked with and know of that allows 720 square feet for a detached garage. No other,
I
no
lived in
other,
Arlington Heights, my house before that, I had a 1,250 square foot garage, I believe it was, maybe
With the carport?
with
But-
a
but-
carport.
in
That was
the
approved.
city of Prospect Heights is one of the most forgiving and
Liberal
towns
so far.
for structures. I've worked in others out in the country that people are limited to 400 or 500, not 720. So the standards that the council has adopted and that have been on the books since 1977 have value to the conditions of the city. So when these are discovered, and we discovered it through plan review, because something did not add up. None of the numbers in the plans for the pool of lot coverage matched what the approved plan said. So we have to ask the question. We would be not doing this.
I'm not
So-
disagreeing with any reason why the
So
questions were asked.
we have, the ZBA has to find a standard in which to approve it. And they're published, they've been the same standards since the beginning of the variations in 77. So, that's what we're trying to hear. We don't want to get in a fight.
And you,
No,
and you
it's
were
okay.
giving, you were given a copy of it, right? So you know what we have to do. That's why what we tried doing the first meeting was to find a way, as Neil said. And unfortunately, it backfired.
So-
Because, the reason that it backfired is, again, because now hearsay is not a driving factor. Now the evidence is the driving factor.
So one other option that Director Peterson and I spoke about, the property that is right next to me, I've actually talked to the owner about purchasing it from him and connecting it to my property. And Director Peterson had said that if the property is purchased, then my lot coverage would expand. Is that correct? Okay.
You have to
So-
replat?
He would have to be ownership, and once he does something like that, then it becomes, the lot's an unbuildable lot anyway.
It's non-buildable property.
So if he
Okay.
could
It's
get, he
100%.
could get the third
For
I maintain the
habitable.
property.
habitable
For
structures.
It was
habitable.
all,
Yeah.
when we first moved in 8 years ago, 9 years ago, the whole property was ridden of garbage.
He,
It was refrigerators, tires, there was a part of a car in there. It was, I
And
can't
it went
even
all the
go
way
on and
up to
on.
our
So-
lot line.
And it was
So
wildfire
there's an
hanging out.
option for you.
so to go to that
An
point,
expensive one, but yeah, sure.
the,
Get a bigger yard.
the standard for lots over 30,000 square feet is you get 200 square feet of an additional accessory structure for every 10,000 square feet of land. So an acre property, which is in effect what you would end up having, could have a total lot coverage of, what, 400 square feet on top of the 1,000, so you'd be at 1,400, and then this structure would comply, but you would be limited to no other accessory structures.
But we still haven't addressed the concrete piers.
So,
That's not us.
well, we're gonna have to discuss on how they were installed and what can be done to support that garage, but that's not the zoning
That's not in our
board's, that's
purview.
not the zoning board's purview.
That's not in our purview.
Then the variation just comes down, and I don't know how long that process would take. I don't know if you want to I'd have to check with legal about, do you withdraw this application, acquire the land, and come back? Because I've never experienced this before. So I'm gonna have to check with legal. If you would like to continue it one more month to get on that aspect, it would be up to the council if they wanted, or the board, if they would like to give another continuance while we investigate that. But that would be a way for, if you acquired that property and had ownership and used it as single lot of record, then you're entitled to extra lot coverage square footage.
Would you then need a variance?
Then he wouldn't need but he would need a variance for a structure in excess of, one structure in excess of 720.
Right.
But then you
We're
could
almost-
justify it
By
By
lot
s-
coverage.
by lot coverage and a condition, no other
Structures.
structures.
And then the fact that the new lot might be unbuildable.
Correct.
That to me is a hardship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that the standards for variations are pretty black and white for us. We can't approve a variation based on hearsay. We have no documentation what the inspector had said. And so there's really, the hardship cannot be directly created by a person, by the owner. It would have to be somebody other than yourself, or any kind of predecessor in interest with proprietary interest in the premises. So we don't have a hardship here, and are there special conditions and circumstances that exist particular to this land that don't apply to the other lands in the same district? No, you're in the neighborhood that is all in this floodplain, and everybody has to comply with the same. It's not like your lot is a triangular shape, or it's not,
Right.
your property isn't so different that there would be a standard for variation that could be approved for that. So our hands are kind of tied here, because, it's very unfortunate that all of these issues did come about, but we can't make them legal because they happened. Because there's nothing here that gives us teeth to do that. And
Is that true? Our property's not- is the
I
same
think
as
that
everybody
the contractor may have
else's?
said,
No.
I'll just add on to it. And there are some pretty
No, not everybody's.
unscrupulous contractors, none of which are here, of course. But they'll tell you anything if they want. If you want to put a overhang on, he'll say, oh, sure, I can do that. We don't have to get a permit. So I don't know if it was really the building inspector that probably told you that. It might have been your contractor. But we don't know. We have no proof of who said what. But I know that there are contractors out there that would tell you that.
I heard it
I,
directly from Daryl.
well, and the one thing I would say too is, I don't know that our lot is exactly the same as everybody in our neighborhood. I
I'm
do-
sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've been at it for, at this point, it's irrelevant. It's again, it's hearsay against the facts. And,
Yeah, the only
yeah,
thing I was gonna bring up.
so one thing before we, so if you wanted to explore other options, you would have to ask us to continue, and we would determine if we want to continue. Before we do that, I want to ask Director Peterson that if we do continue, I really would hate to be put in this position again, where we have to evaluate against the standards, and we find things that, you know, the owner buys a land, and all of a sudden, we can't approve it.
Here's what my suggestion would be, and I understand the question, Chairman Kempa, is that we, the zoning board, when I say we, request the continuance for more consideration to try and find a definition to legal nonconforming to try and approve the project, and that's why it was continued. The applicant still has an ability to exercise a continuance for them to do some research, allow us to, you know, I can go and ask the question of the attorney about if they acquire the land, and then can it be used as part of this process? My staff opinion, and I'm not an attorney, and understanding the code would indicate yes, but we would like to have a legal report on that if that's the desire of the ZBA.
Doesn't that make everything different, though? I mean, shouldn't this one be withdrawn and a new application with the proper dimensions of the new expanded property dimensions? And, I mean, it's a whole different picture then. that we would be looking at.
I would much prefer that.
And then also, you're not gonna close the property typically in 30 days. There's just a process. So I
I'm
think
sorry, what'd you say?
You're probably not gonna purchase a property within 30 days. It's just, there's a process in getting a
Sure.
property, right? So, to me, I'm thinking potentially withdraw and then reapply once you guys decide what you wanna do. That's the route I go. If you're in the room here, I think you're not gonna get what you want if we go through vote here. I think you're better off probably asking for a
Investigating, yeah.
continuance or withdraw and then come back with the lot. And that gives us an option to look into, look, we'd love to try to get this done, we just don't have a vehicle to get it done for you. There just isn't.
Yeah, that was the only thing I was questioning, was you mentioned about not having a hardship because we have the same property as everybody else, and I do believe that our property does have a little bit different dynamic than other properties in the neighborhood because of how low we are. I wasn't sure if that creates any
No,
hardship.
it's more like
Yeah.
the geometry of your shed. Like
Okay.
if you were living in
Okay.
a triangle that has a lot of easements and then you're
Got
trying
it.
to do a
Okay.
garage off an easement,
Okay.
that gives us a little
That's all I
leeway,
wanted
right?
clarity on.
That's something
But
that.
please keep in mind that when you evaluate this for the next time, whatever that is, if you withdraw, I would prefer that if there you withdrew the application and start it fresh, because then you can get prepared for it.
Okay.
And look at the standards, and you have to meet all of them.
Got it, okay.
Not just one that in my property is unlike the other ones, all of them. And there is, we try, like I say, we try to accommodate.
We appreciate
It's very, very hard when your hands are tight.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate.
So to ask your question about meeting the standards, if we were to withdraw this application and move into buying the property and acquiring the property and then applying for a variance after we have owned the property, you're saying that it would be something that is the variations, or sorry, the standards are already on the table because they're already there. Is that what you're saying?
So we have a list of standards, 10 standards. These 10 have to be met. And there, some are vague, some are just, it doesn't affect neighbors.
But the
It's not- it's- they're
variation
vague.
request might be
Few-
different, right?
And this is kind of, we have to determine if it falls into these 10.
So,
Once we have once.
So you're saying even if we don't meet those standards, you guys could still deny it again?
so they have to, each case has to be evaluated on the merits of each case, okay? It can't be over, so if the conditions of the adding the lot, now we're talking a lot, instead of 20,000 square feet, we're talking a lot. So now the numbers change.
Okay.
That, you have a lot next to you that has been determined to be unbuildable for occupiable structure. So there are condition changes that change, and then depending on how you prepare the application,
What your variation request is.
because that changes what the request is.
Gotcha.
The only thing that I can state in this, in the current condition, they still have one, and that is a single structure over 720. But that's, that is just what we have here. But if they have, instead of 1,000 square feet of total lot coverage and a not higher number, if they acquire the other land, then that changes the size of the request, the
Yeah,
amount of the
so-
request.
I would also suggest that before you purchase the property, do an option to purchase the property subject to
Contingency.
getting
Approval.
the approval
That was gonna be my
for
next
what you
question.
need.
Is can we do it a conditional, just because I don't want to his point, I don't want to purchase
Yeah, we have
property
higher.
and then somehow conditions are still not met and then now we're at this
You
property
have,
that
you
we.
have two people, you
that
gotta
was the
get to
question,
two,
right,
two
asked
boards,
it.
you gotta get to us, and then you gotta get to Bill. But I think, and just to summarize real quick, if you buy the next property, you're allowed to do 3 separate structures that add to X amount of square feet.
Sure.
The fact that the next one's unbuildable might give us an opportunity to combine them into one, make this a structure. That's the window we're looking at right now, okay? That gives
Okay.
us your hardship, unbuildable, we can combine it in one, and gives us an opportunity to prove this. We just don't have that opportunity right now.
Is there any kind of a time frame that this has to be done because you found the violation, Dan, that?
I think he complied with the applying for the variation so he can continue with the pool. I think as long as the effort and communicates that they're working in good faith to bring this back, the city's not here to force them to remove anything at this time. That's not, even though that is an ultimate option at the end of the day, but we do want to work with you to try and find a solution. Okay, that's the position I would take as the director, is that as long as you're working in good standing and you come back, we will stay enforcement. But with the understanding that should at any time it doesn't go through, then we have to address the nonconformity.
Okay. And we appreciate you guys working with us and listening to our hardships.
How much we love our overhang.
So you have to now decide if you want to
So-
withdraw or continue, right?
Do we have to decide that right now?
What's the drawback of?
I think so.
I would prefer to contact my attorney on that.
So then you want to continue and then make the withdrawal later, right?
Do we have to make a withdrawal in person?
You can do it in writing,
Okay.
okay? That is.
Withdrawal is possible after continuation, so there's
So-
two continuations
So
allowed?
no, basically what happens is the applicant always has a right to ask for a continuation. They did not seek the first continuation, that was board driven, so they have the ability to ask for a continuation at this time to regroup, do this,
Okay.
come back, because they haven't had that opportunity yet. So it's not outside. We've done this before on other cases to give the applicant their opportunity.
Okay. So then, is that what we want to do, just request a continuation?
Yeah.
And then,
We'll do that.
okay.
Do I need to
We'd like to
vote
request
for-
The question is typically continuations are to the next meeting, which would be June 23rd.
We'll have a decision then. We'll contact our attorney to get advisement on which way we want to even go and.
Excuse me, the next regular meeting date of the ZBA is June 25th.
Okay.
So a decision, we would need a decision the week before, and we'll talk more because
Sure.
whatever documentation has to be evaluated and analyzed and a report has to be put together.
Okay.
So it's something that it can't be sat on, you have to
Sure.
start working.
And is there a certain deadline prior to the next
When I
meeting
get-
that you would like us, if we're going to decide to withdraw?
Yes, and what I'll do is when I get upstairs to a calendar and stuff tomorrow, I will send you an email
Okay.
Okay.
of the timing that's required. for notice.
All right.
So then, we'd like to formally request a continuation to the next PCPA meeting.
Thank you.
All righty.
We don't have to vote on
You have to close the
Yeah,
vote.
no, we do have to accept,
Okay.
you have to take action on their request.
Okay, so-
You do have to accept or deny.
So, can I have a motion to accept applicant's request to continue case number
2504.
2504V?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons. Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Here, yes. Sorry.
Commissioner Krzyzewski. Commissioner Weigel.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye.
No, I'm not closing, it's continued.
It's continued. So we will be in communication,
Okay, thank you.
okay? And this, a decision one way or the other, because they cannot continue it again. Okay,
Got it.
so,
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I'm lost, I don't know where I am.
no, that's, we're at the, there's no new business.
Okay, there is no new business. Is there any, anything that anybody wants to say? No?
You look very nice today. You dressed up for the meeting. Wow. I'm impressed.
We're still on, we're still on.
I wanted for the record.
That's the new standard.
Just a quick update. Last night, the city council brought back the draft chicken ordinance as recommended by the PZBA. They tabled it back in December. They had some concerns. It was nothing that was actions of the ZBA or anything that were their concerns. The biggest issue came is with the making chicken owning a right in the R1 of all. The concern,
Instead of a special use.
a special use. And the concern was that if you're a property owner, you've been here 20 years and you're not a chicken person, didn't ask for chicken persons, you could literally have 100 birds around you. Okay, and what is that negative impact to that person? So there was concerns about how the zoning is applied. The question then became, well, what's another alternative? And under zoning, it would have to have been permitted by a special use. And under our structure, unless there was text amendments, it would be $400 application, certified mail, hearing before this body for every single person that wanted to get a chicken. And that would be both cumbersome and financially punitive to those individuals that wanted to keep chickens. In reviewing everything that we did, I've been directed to revise the ordinance and move it forward, and everything that the PZBA did, other than what directions were given by council last night, are going to be incorporated into the new ordinance. Some of it is going to be accepted as the lot coverage, the new coop sizes, the mobile coops, those things that are specifically related to zoning will remain in the zoning, but they will also, the rest of it will be moved to and incorporated into the animal control ordinance, which allows the licensing and the ability to establish the number of properties, the other things, and a licensing procedure, because in zoning, we can't license that use. And it's all or nothing, and that was the opinion.
Who handles the animal control?
That particular section is a combined between the police and the building department code enforcement. So the two ordinances, the ordinances for the animal control, basically all those requirements that you reviewed for the new section 5-3-21 are going to be just transferred into that body along with an application process. So it's everybody will see exactly what the process is, how it takes place, and what the standards are. So the council wants me to have this revision back to them for June 9th, and then the 23rd for second and final reading. We're looking, depending on how that goes, I will need probably 45 days to get everything, all the education out there, all the notices, get the application process started. The program, as I envision it now and talk to administration and council, would be a calendar year with the application process, typically the renewals in November or December, with the licensing starting January 1, because that's usually a quieter time for building permits. For us, we can process that. They're looking at limiting the number to roughly 75 properties, and that's based right now on the fact of what was commented during testimony, and over the last 2 winters, we've done some visual drive-throughs the community when there's been no leaves on the bushes or trees. Now, just because there may be a structure that appears to be a chicken coop, the person may or may not still have chickens. We don't know until the application process starts. But all the council people felt that that was a good place to start at.
So there would be limited to 75 properties within the city.
Yep, roughly 2% of the single-family home population.
And how would they limit one house having
All
chicken
of them.
owners all around?
So here's the issue, that was a point of discussion last night, and we all know that that condition exists today, that there's some parts of the neighborhood, I've got a map upstairs, that is just our rough estimation, but we know that there's some properties that have, one house may be within 2 or 3 properties of 4 chicken owning owners. If during the process of permitting, we do our initial inspections and we identify them, and there are people that have had chickens, established coops and property owners, they're going to be allowed to keep them, okay? And until such time as either they don't renew their license, okay? They move because the licenses are not going to be transferable, okay? And then then by attrition, it'll get down, and then any new applicant that's not an existing owner, when we do our initial assessment, we'll be able to know which properties are currently registered chicken properties. And we don't know yet from council, but the feeling is that no more than 2 properties can have chickens abutting a non-owner.
So they'll put that in writing.
Mm-hmm. That's the challenge I have with, and I'm going to have it with legal to help structure that. And the concern comes, the council did a good job of looking at the greater good of what happens if it's just a free-for-all. And what happens to our citizens who've been here forever that never asked for it. Now, all of a sudden, they've got a small flock around them.
How are the 75 applications, if you reach that threshold, how do you get pested with new applications?
I've looked at other towns that have restrictions like this, and they've provided me with their processes for waiting lists. And as the licenses are an annual renewal, and if an existing chicken owner does not meet their renewal time frame, in every single one of the other towns, Rolling Meadows, Mundelein, and a couple others that have that in there, if you as the chicken owner don't renew your license, it's going to get assigned to somebody else. And you can't come back a month later and say, oh, I forgot. Okay, this is a responsibility you have as a live chicken owner.
No. That'd be, I can imagine the problem that would create.
But at some point in time, if a person doesn't renew their license and they come in 90 days later and they don't answer or respond, are they a responsible chicken owner?
I think there's probably, like, if you're due December 1st, you get one warning, January 1st, February 1st, you lose it, and then you go to the next.
So those are all time things that the council's going to have, but as I talked to my counterpart in Mundelein, they tried something similar to that and found that none of the people that had the licenses wanted to get them, so they delayed and delayed and delayed. And then the people on the waiting list were like, well, what about us? We're wanting to go. We want to do this. And then if the person's not going to be responsible enough to come in and get their license, are they a responsible enough owner to follow all the other parts of the rules?
No.
So I don't know how that's gonna end up, but there
That's
are,
pretty rough.
I don't know how that's, I'm still researching how that process is gonna look, but, you know, they did it direct, you know, I do wanna have a waiting list process, and when we get interested applications, and we'll let them know they'll be date stamped, we'll know which in time they come in, so who's first on the list, and that right now is the direction that council's giving me.
Do we know, hey Dan, do you have a count? Like a count of interested parties right now? Is there more than 75, less than 75? I'm just curious.
We know for a fact that the chicken owner group themselves have said that they're between 50 and 60. Okay? We don't have exact, because not everyone that attended a ZBA meeting over the last year gave us their contact information. We do know on a drive-by, but I know like Jerry, he's got a chicken coop, but he hasn't had chickens in how long?
That chicken coop's been down for a year and a half.
Well, it used to be up.
I probably had it in 2
chickens?
years
Mhm.
before the chickens.
So,
He's raising
so there are structures that we don't know
Right? There's
if
probably
they've
values
still
above
got
that.
chickens or not.
That's another
You know,
thing they considered it.
But based on the comments from the people that attended, plus what we've seen, we feel pretty comfortable with that 50 to 70 number. I'd rather err on the higher side right now, because that's still, the 75 is manageable. And even doing the inspections to follow the protocols to provide safe inspections for those properties. I have 2 inspectors that could do 1 inspection a day and have all the coops inspected within 2 months. It's not a burdensome
Not to ask
process.
you, and a silly question, but if you buy the license, are you required to have a chicken?
That's gonna be part of the issue, because then you monopolize the license.
Right? 'Cause it could be like a
That
property
market,
value thing,
I'll
right?
buy 50 of them and then
No.
sell them.
You can- No, but you can.
Can only buy one. And at this point in time, no, the intent of this is that not to monopolize or withhold. If a person is interested in chickens, you get the license, then if you don't get your coops and stuff in and up and approved, then why do you have the license? And then we'll go to, you know, if you're just holding it to, and potentially could be viewed as harming other people that want to have chickens.
And I'm saying, like, let's say property owners, man, these licenses are 75, they're down to 74, and I want to sell my house in a year, and I know that if I have a chicken coop, it makes my house more marketable.
No,
There's an opportunity.
the licenses will not be transferable.
Ooh.
No, the applicant who gets it,
You can take the
Yeah.
chicken with you.
you take the chickens with you. And then anybody comes in, the coop may be permitted and compliant, but you still don't have the right as the new individual to have a license until you apply for it.
And so you might have, then you're back on the waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
That first guy, he threw out, he said he got the FOIA, and there was 601 or 605 animal complaints, and only one was for chickens. Was that factual?
I don't know. I know they've filed numerous FOIAs. The problem is, and we experience it, is we get a call, we do an investigation. If we don't hear a rooster crowing, we don't see a code violation, it's not a reported complaint. It's an unverified call for service. So there's 2 different mechanisms, and that's the difficulty with this and the whole issue of, mainly of the roosters. But now that it's in both sides, if someone goes out there and they see that an individual has got a mound of manure and they smell a detectable odor, it can be handled by not just building department, but also the police at that point in time of the actual call. So there's some better enforcement potential with it where it's at, other than just in zoning.
Are they
Use
eliminating
it wrong.
the opportunity to have roosters still?
Mm-hmm. They did, Originally, the council had a concern about the domesticated ducks and quail, but after discussion last night, they agreed to allow them as recommended by the PZBA. They did allow the 20. There was a big concern at first that 20 was too many in aggregate, but then after discussions last night, the council did come to a consensus that they were fine with the 20 based on no scientific, but just by analysis on an average bird count that the ZBA recommended. So,
So much for the chicken coop. So much for the chicken coop. We were gonna get one, but I don't.
hey, come in right away.
I know someone that'll put you on the top of the list.
First guy.
Her name's Jack.
It'll be interesting going forward, but I think the council on the 6 decision points, they agreed, they went back and agreed with what was recommended by the PZBA. On the other 3 items, they were set on the yes, you have to be licensed, they established a number, and then for the registration and annual inspections.
And then they have to register with, are they gonna do that,
And,
government thing?
yep, because Pat brought the actual act in, and it says right in there, backyard chicken keeping is a activity that is to be registered with the state.
So the $400 is that's an annual?
No, that was only if, the question was asked, under zoning, is there a way to restrict it to be other than by right? Because, you know, when I look at an R1 district, if they come in with the application and it says by right, and it's a permitted use, I have to issue that permit unless there's some other, like a structural issue, they got too many other accessory structures, something along those lines. I have to issue it, and that means that any property could have gotten it. So they asked the question, under zoning, what is the other alternative under our current code? In our current code, we could amend the text to allow chicken keeping by special use. Well, now you become a very expensive, almost punitive situation, which could cost a homeowner $1,000 just to get a hearing to that. Not only that, it puts a huge burden on staff and on the plan commission to hear all of those cases. And so it's not a practical solution. So my recommendation was amend the zoning code to allow chickens as a permitted use by license as outlined in Title IX of Animal Control, because that's basically what it is. Okay, and then make sure our zoning requirements, which you did, which there was no discussion on the mobile coops, the expanded size, as long as it doesn't go over 1,000 square feet, all those other things we talked about, they were fine with. So I've got a little writing to do this week.
Anything else from anybody? Any updates?
Did we have
No
to,
fee?
Not
accept
yet.
those into?
No, because it's
Not yet, it's continued. There may be
Just
more,
making sure,
there may be more.
just making sure.
So Dan, is there a fee or is there?
We,
what's the fee has been
we
determined?
we talked about initial fee of $90, which was basically a review of the permit, a permit for the structure and the zoning review, or, no, let me rephrase it, the zoning review and the $40 chicken license, because that's what we had talked about. So $90 initially, and then the second, after that, it was a $40 annual review. But that's going to be not done by ordinance, that's going to be put in the fee schedule so that periodically from time to time, the council has the right to amend the fees instead of having to amend the whole ordinance. So, right now, we're proposing those people who have non-conforming structures will have a year, like to get those structures and get their places in order. A couple of aldermen didn't want to give that long. They thought 6 months was more than enough time to do it. However, as a consensus, they directed for a year for the sunset. But all new applicants have to be compliant out of the box.
Good.
Gavel it up, kid.
All right, that's it? Any more questions?
Nope. Can I please have a motion to adjourn at 9:07?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?